Meet Bravo, a little dog whose story of pain, resilience, and hope will touch your heart in a profound and unforgettable way. It was a cold, rainy afternoon, one of those where the gray sky seemed to reflect the mood of the world around me. The rain had just stopped, and the sound of the drops still echoed on the sidewalks, when, as I was walking home, I heard a distant cry, almost imperceptible but full of suffering. As I looked around, I saw a small figure huddled on the side of the road. I approached cautiously and saw a little dog who looked fragile and vulnerable, completely terrified. His eyes, large and frightened, avoided any eye contact. It was as if he was afraid to look directly at the world that had hurt him so much. Bravo, as we later called him, was shaking. His body was barely holding itself together, his legs were weak, and he seemed to have no strength even to try to run away or scream for help. He just stood there, motionless, with an expression of despair so deep that my heart almost stopped when I saw him. That little creature seemed to have been through something terrible, something so traumatic that it had left him paralyzed with fear. There was a mixture of apathy and terror in his eyes, as if he had given up fighting for his life. As I approached, Bravo showed no reaction. He was so downcast that he seemed to have lost all hope that anyone could help him. Even so, I slowly bent down and tried to pet him, speaking softly, so as not to scare him even more. He was shaking with fear, but he offered no resistance when I picked him up in my arms. The coldness of his body and his fragility were striking. It was clear that, in addition to being emotionally destroyed, he was physically exhausted. As soon as I put him in the car, I drove straight to the vet, my heart beating fast, fearing the worst. On the way, I noticed something that worried me even more. Foam was starting to come out of Bravo's mouth. It was an alarming sign, possibly indicating poisoning or a serious viral infection. The tension in the air increased. I knew time was of the essence, and every second that passed seemed to weigh more heavily. When we arrived at the vet, the medical team acted immediately, performing a series of urgent tests to try to understand what was happening to that poor little dog. The minutes dragged by as we waited for the results. Fortunately, the tests for poisoning and viral infections came back negative, but that didn't mean Bravo was out of danger. Suddenly, his body temperature plummeted, a worrying sign that made the vets redouble their care. And then, unexpectedly, Bravo began to convulse. It was a moment of pure despair. Seeing that little body suffering so intensely, with nothing to do but wait for the doctors to stabilize him, was agonizing. "Hold on tight, Bravo. We're here for you," I whispered as I watched the medical team work quickly. They were as perplexed as I was, but there was a shared determination among them all, not to give up on that little dog. Bravo, despite being stabilized, still seemed trapped in a world of fear and panic. His eyes, once filled with despair, were now heavy with pain, as if he were reliving the suffering he had experienced every moment. After much effort and dedication on the part of the doctors, Bravo finally began to show signs of improvement. His body, previously tense and aching, began to slowly relax, as if, for the first time in a long time, he were allowing himself to rest. He fell into a deep sleep, his first true and restful sleep in days, perhaps weeks. When he woke up, something extraordinary happened. He ate. It was not just a meal. It was a small gesture of hope, a first step towards recovery. It was a moment of victory for all of us who had followed his fight for survival. Day after day, Bravo grew stronger. His recovery was slow, but each small step forward was celebrated with great joy. He began to stand up, to walk more firmly, and most importantly, to regain some of his confidence in the world around him. The transformation in his behavior was remarkable. That terrified puppy who had trembled with fear now began to look at people with less suspicion. There was still a long way to go, but Bravo was being reborn. Under the dedicated care of his adoptive father, Bravo began to experience something he had never known before: genuine love and affection. Day by day, he was transforming. His body, once frail and exhausted, was now stronger. His eyes, which had previously reflected only fear, now shone with curiosity and a touch of joy. That little dog, who had once been abandoned on the side of the road, struggling with pain and despair, now had a new life. Today, Bravo is a symbol of resilience and resilience. He has left behind the trauma and fear that once defined him, and in the care of his new family, he has been reborn. Bravo now lives a life filled with love, play, and ultimately peace. He is living proof that with the right care and determination to not give up, even the most damaged souls can heal and flourish. Bravo didn't just survive, he overcame. He is a powerful reminder that we should never underestimate the impact of love and compassion in the life of a vulnerable being. Bravo's journey teaches us that even in the darkest moments, there is hope.